So hello, everyone. This is Steve Cook with LifeOnaire. We have a pretty special call today. I have our guest, Sean Borg, with us. Sean, thank you for joining us here today.
Thank you for inviting me.
One of the things that I wanted to try to accomplish and start doing more of within the community, something I used to do quite a bit of, is basically sharing the success stories of those who are in LifeOnaire and what they have done, what they have accomplished. Sean came to a LifeStream in lieu of our live events, which we always did live events, but the first LifeStream that we did earlier in the year, which was basically our 3-day LifeOnaire event online, Sean and his wife came and attended that. And it was something that I feel just sort of gave them that spark that they needed to get out and start doing the things that they wanted to do and accomplish the things that they wanted to accomplish. And in my opinion, they have had some great success in a rather short period of time. And we wanted to just begin to just exploring that. They're well on their way to achieving their goals. So, Sean, can you just tell us a little bit about yourself and your wife, and maybe give us a little bit of background into yourselves?
Yeah. Absolutely. I like in terms of the real estate journey, or just where we're from, where we've gone.
Where you're from, where you've gone, and then we'll touch upon the real estate side of it.
So I'll just start a little bit further back. In 2017, I think I had back surgery and hip surgery in a very short period of time. With that came, I realized life is too short to not do anything with, not go anywhere. And so I actually took a year off to just travel the world, just starting right out of the gate in a job where I just wasn't quite as fulfilled as what I wanted. And so we took off. I traveled through Asia. I actually met my wife in Australia, who is from Germany. And we just took a long time to travel, enjoy ourselves. And from there, that's when I've realized, like, at the moment I got on that plane, money was not important to me. All of these life experiences were the most important thing to me. Like when I was 17, 18, I always wanted a Lamborghini. I rented one once, and it was just like, what am I doing? Like, let's try these different things and go from there. And so after doing that, I moved back to Dallas, Texas for 1 year before my wife found a position up in Chicago. And so I told her if she moved anywhere in the United States, I would follow. And actually, I got a great position up in Chicago. And so I moved up here. And since then, I had been trying to figure out the real estate journey, where to buy, what to do, and that sort of thing.
Okay, so I mean, I think it's pretty awesome that you had that experience even beforehand, that you realized that, being able to experience life was more important than going out there and making money. So how did you view money? Did you see it as something bad or negative, or the pursuit of it?
An ends to a means. Money bought me. I mean, it takes a certain amount of money to be able to go travel the world for a year. So it does take money to do the things that you want. But I had some of the coolest experiences without money, like whether hopping on the back of a truck with 8 other monks going into Southeast Asia, seeing how people live in a different lifestyle and how happy they are in those moments. And so it takes a little bit to be able to see these things for the plane flight and whatnot, but it does not take much. So it's just a tool that you can use to go get life's experiences.
So you mentioned to me last week, and I never even, it impacted me when I heard it, but I didn't say anything to you about it. But you talked about, going through Europe and taking a van through Europe, that you could do that with $50 a day.
Yeah, absolutely. It does not take much to hop on, and like even if I did it with a car, or hostels or that sort of thing, it's so cheap to get in there because you just realize it's parking, it's figuring something else out, and something a little covert, but it does not take much money to travel.
And so I think that's a misnomer that a lot of people have. They think that they can't have those experiences until they get rich, until they make it, and they just have so much money. And you've not only have discovered, but you have experienced otherwise.
Exactly. That's absolutely, it does not take much money to travel. I mean, some have a lifestyle standard that they're looking for, but those things aren't really needed because, like, when I travel, I want to show up, try to meet someone, see something, see how they're living, whether it's a little bit different. And so it's just a completely different expectation when traveling.
And so you're basically then, I'm guessing that you're at a point where with a good job in the US, you could work it for a year, save up a bunch of money, take a year off, and have enough to travel.
Yeah, absolutely. It's doesn't take me much to survive, and like ultimately, I'm saving money to be able to take more time off and travel, and those are the experiences that I really crave for.
So, well, let's talk about that then a little bit. You went through the LifeStream, and one of the things that came out of going through that event and developing a vision for yourself was both you and your wife wanted to get back to that ability to be able to just travel. And did you have a sense of, while you were getting settled in the Chicago area, that I'm losing something, or what was going on? Did you feel free, or did you feel like what was going on in your mind then?
When I was in the Chicago area, I mean, I initially moved up here because of my wife, but no, I didn't feel that because I felt kind of where I was chained back down to a position in some form or another. And so it's, yes, it does take money and kind of building that out. And so I had been looking for things to, ways to find my way out, essentially. And that's actually one of the most valuable things I gained from Lifeonaire. I didn't realize how important it is to have a community around you to push you in that direction, because what does it really take if you're looking to buy a house? I mean, you're like, well, I just go buy a house, but it's not. There's a lot of influences that I didn't understand how that affects one person.
Mm-hmm. So when you are in the Chicago area, did you consider buying a house for yourself and planting roots there?
I have considered not necessarily planting roots, but I had been looking for real estate investing opportunities in the Chicago area. And the deals are here, but they're just a little bit harder in the city itself. And it took me a while for Lifeonaire, just talking it through and thinking about it and where to go and whatnot, and kind of balancing those around to really find what I was looking for.
So the idea of real estate investing and buying investments in the Chicago area, what was it that was driving you? Were you looking at something that would make you free? Were you looking to live in the home yourself as an investment opportunity? What
I see. I was looking for something for freedom. And that's ultimately what drives me into the real estate business, is something that gets me out of the day job, that really frees me from everything that a job requires from you.
Good. So I don't want anybody to lose sight of, there's one thing that I think is important from what you have shared here so far, is that you have actually chosen to live a simple life so that it doesn't get complicated and you do have the freedom to be able to go. Now, if you would have bought an expensive home in Chicago and filled the garage with a couple of cars and tried to live the way most people in Chicago would try to live, some of these goals will be put off for quite some time. Would you agree?
Absolutely.
So both you and your wife are on the same page then with your vision.
Yes.
Do you feel like you were on the same page, or were you starting to maybe go in different directions, or did going through the LifeStream help?
I think going through the LifeStream really helped guide us in the directions that we want, and kind of because her goals are slightly different than my goals, and it kind of helps filter through some opportunities between where it's a shared vision versus one or the other. Mm-hmm. If that makes sense, because she has traveled even more extensively than I have, and she moved for about 5 years, and I had only done it for 1, and so her same vision doesn't constantly move as much as probably what mine does.
Yeah. So any specific examples where the two of you may have been apart and then you came together?
I can't think of any right off the top of my head. I think the most specific one is was the travel one. I think, like, for example, she would particularly like to move to Europe, and some of it is we're still working through it. We haven't figured out exactly where we want to be 100%, but we're definitely kind of on the same page and talking it through and that sort of thing.
So there was, at some point or another in this process, the two of you sort of came up with a plan that would set you free. And can you just tell us a little bit about what that plan was?
So initially, the plan, sorry, we're just down the street from a fire station, so you guys may hear a little bit in the background. Initially, the plan was looking for a home actually in the Chicago area and buying real estate with that to see whether we could rent out the extra rooms, like a 4 flat or that sort of thing. And I was looking for a way to be a little bit cheaper on a month-to-month basis, but I realized a lot of these homes were $400,000, $500,000 in the nicer areas. And I'm like, these are cash flowing about $100 a flat. And I'm just sitting there running through the numbers and I'm like, yes, I can save a little bit on rent, but it just doesn't make sense because that doesn't include repairs, CapEx, or that sort of thing. And so, and that's where it took a while to really hone in, because whenever we initially joined Lifeonaire, we were also looking at living in a different area. We went down from one weekend because that's what Lifeonaire gave us, was kind of that vision where we wanted to go, what we wanted to do. And we're like, okay, let's go travel. We got down there, it's like, okay, it's hot and muggy. So let's do something here and now and try to build ourselves and at least free it and build the train so that we're starting to get the momentum moving to really free ourselves.
And so where did you land? What did you come up with?
So initially it started, we traveled down, looked, didn't find anything. So I came back here and I was like, you know what? Why don't we just try Northwest Indiana? And so actually on the way back from our trip, we just drove around Northwest Indiana. An old real estate agent mentioned, he's like, you know what, we're not here to show you the areas, but if you find what you want, like, just go drive neighborhoods. And that's exactly what we did. So we drove Northwest Indiana, neighborhood to neighborhood, just kind of, it probably took 4 or 5 hours. And then we would put on Google Maps where we wanted to be or where we didn't want to be. And there were some, I remember going through your books on a 128 and looking for boarded houses. And we would go into the more sketchy neighborhoods and like, okay, let's get out of here and go into some nicer neighborhoods and find that balance between all of them and then see what works and what doesn't work.
And so you ended up identifying areas in Northwest Indiana. So for all intents and purposes, just so everybody knows, in the eyes of many, is a suburb of Chicago. And so it's not like you decided, oh, we're going to go invest in a different state. It is a different state, but it's really not that far from you.
Correct.
And so once you began to identify, what were the things that attracted you to that area as far as, this is where we want to start investing?
It was just the price per square foot. You can buy a $85,000 home and get $1,100 in rent, sort of thing. I don't know the exact cap numbers on that off the top of my head, but it was just the numbers when I realized, like, we attended one RIA that was like, yeah, we're buying $100,000 homes and we're renting it out to $1,000 a month. And so you just realized, and every area of the country is different, but you just realize what works and what doesn't work. And then especially when you're starting out, you don't want to take the risk of putting a lot of money into a home in downtown Chicago, and then 6 months later, COVID would have happened. And so hindsight is 2020, but it's a lot more risk whenever versus buying one home and then like, okay, does this work? Does this not work? And playing through it and running through it.
So when you came up with that, you're on a certain level, you're a number cruncher. You like crunching numbers. You identified this area, and then at some point you came up with a number of homes that you would need to be free, to be able to go off and travel. How many houses would you need to put into your portfolio for you to be free and to start that process of just traveling?
The perfect number would be 12 homes. We could probably get by on less, but it would be 12 homes in the end.
And 1,200 gives you a lot of flexibility, and margin with that, or?
That gives us a lot of flexibility. It gives us extra income. It's not a huge amount of money where you can't do everything you possibly wanted to do, but it's more than enough for us.
Mm-hmm. So how many have you done since the LifeStream? I think you took the LifeStream in May.
Yeah, we did. We came out and we did 2 homes already. Like it takes quite a bit once you get going, but in reality, like purchasing the homes, it's not hard at all. Figuring out the process, you're sitting here, you're like, okay, you know what? I just got to try things and see whether this works. Just 1 second. I got a bunch of sun in my eyes.
No problem.
Oh, that's a lot better. Sorry about that.
I had to do the same before we got started. So you picked up 2 of them, and I know that there are certain things that you were looking for and that was important to you. You came up with all your criteria of what was going to be a good home for you prior to. It wasn't like you weren't being opportunity driven. You knew what you wanted and you went out and you looked for it.
Yeah. It was the initial criteria. I didn't want to be in a really scary area. There are better returns in certain areas. And I drove those neighborhoods and I'm like, where's the balance? Like, I don't want a high management because ultimately my goal is to be free. Like if I'm sitting here going out every weekend trying to figure that out, that's not going to free myself. I'm just going to chain myself to more rentals. And so it was finding that correct price point or what I felt was correct just based on the area and driving through those neighborhoods. And also that still had a decent return between both of those. And so once you identify an area that you're okay with investing in, then can I buy all the properties in the same neighborhood? So I'm not driving all around that area, and I'm not driving 30 minutes to a different house if I want to go see them all.
So how far apart are the 2 that you've purchased?
They're 10 minutes apart.
So all within a same general vicinity. Are they the same town?
Yes, they're within the same town, and some of that is figuring out everything with that particular city because we have to file things with the city and that sort of thing. And so now we just have, I forget what the word, but we can do everything the same. We know the process within the city.
And so both of your properties are occupied right now?
Absolutely, yeah. Go ahead.
Is that hard?
The first one is easier than the second one, and it's working through the process. Some of it, we bought the first property just knowing that, okay, is this going to work? Is this not going to work? We're just going to try it. And so I think it took us 5 showings to get out there. And then the second one took 6 showings, and we realized we probably should have accepted other tenants as we were going through it, and we had looked at credit scores and we're just adjusting it and figuring out, because we're like, okay, we had 6 applications for both of these. Like we could have accepted the first tenant, but we didn't want to go that route either. I've heard from other people, don't accept the first tenant. And so it's working through them and trying to find who you get along with, who you don't get along with, while also meeting the local laws without discrimination.
Mm-hmm. So bottom line is you're 1/6 of the way toward where you really want to be. That gives you tons of freedom, a lot of margin. I think if I'm correct, you could get by with half of that.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so you're 1/3 of the way from being free and just being able to travel all the time if you wanted to live more modestly, but ideally you'd like to have twice as much.
Correct. Yeah. Correct.
So what are the plans as far as moving forward, and what do you see happening in the next 6 months?
The next 6 months, I think I will probably be waiting a couple of months before I purchase again, just due to the timeline of it's a little bit harder to rent in the winter months. And so if it's that becomes a little more challenging, and then on top of it, I would prefer all of the houses to be at the leased out around the same time of year, so we can do them all at the same time and just go, because if I can get a process down where I can get all the properties at the same time, I only need to be in Chicago for a certain period of time or pay someone for a certain amount of properties at the same time, and I can do everything in bulk.
Mm-hmm. So you're thinking ahead of what does this need to look like if I'm in Europe and I want to stay in Europe, or if I have to come back to the United States to manage my properties, I want to come back for 1 month and have everyone, any of my tenants who are going to turn over, I want them to turn over that month so that I can just fill them up and then get back on the road again.
Correct.
I mean, I love it because it's a well thought out plan, and you're thinking ahead. It's being driven by your vision. It's not being driven by opportunity, which is what so many landlords do. And when landlords use opportunity as their means for acquiring properties, they end up with messy, high management portfolios that really never set them free. And, I do remember many times as I was up and coming as a real estate investor, I've met landlords who had been landlords for 10, 20 years. And I looked at them, I was like, I don't want their life. I don't want to do what they're doing, because they never seemed to be happy. They were always complaining. And the other side of the flip side of the coin is when there is a strong vision in place and you build a portfolio to serve that vision, it makes all the difference in the world. And it changes everything.
It does. And that's one of the things that really drives me. When I see what I want right in front of me, I realize how far along, how quickly I can achieve it, what it would take to achieve it, and the numbers behind it. And I just have to push after it. And I can calculate per month and just kind of sit down. It just becomes a big math equation. Like the first one's a little bit more challenging. You're just like, I got to buy a house. But then after that, it's just pushing forward and pushing through.
So, and I love that because one of the things I've been coaching now for a long time, and as a coach, and I'm going to talk about flips, people who would flip a property, people would always feel like I was holding back, or there was some secret nugget, or there was something that I wasn't telling them. And I was just always, trying to coach them through the fact, look, I'm not holding anything back. There are nuances with each and every deal that we might not know, and there's some things that might come up. But 90 to 95% of every deal that you do is the same thing. And once you get the first one done, you never have those questions again, because you now have experienced it. It's not just me telling you. It's not theoretical. It's not something you read in a book. But now that you've been through the process and you know how the title company works and you know what the costs are and you know how to get insurance and about what it costs, once you're dealing with the same homes, same types of homes over and over again, you know what the utility bills are, you know who to call, you know, all of those answers are out of the way. And so I always highly encourage people to just push through that first deal, because it's the hardest one. And then after that, they seem to just fall into place. And I can think back to my very first one. I don't have the paperwork on that anymore. I wish I would have held on to it. But my very first deal, you couldn't read my signature on the first contract that I signed because I was shaking so bad when I signed it. And and I was just a wreck. Just were so nervous about all the unknowns to come. And I quickly found out after I, got into the deal and did it, it wasn't that big of a deal. And it wasn't probably only a few months later, I just nonchalantly signed everything that I was signing. But that first one was nerve wracking. So any tips that you would give to our listeners or anybody who's on the call with us right now?
I think a lot of it is if you're looking out and going through your first deal is just pushing through it and driving and trying to figure it out. And there are still questions after you get through the first one. And even if you're part of the community, I reach out and ask questions as I'm going along. I don't have the whole process down, but I know after a period of time I will. Like there'll still be new things that come up, but it's just part of doing it. And it's like the book Atomic Habits. The more you do it, the better you get, the more efficient, the cost goes down, and the first deal isn't the end all be all. And most of it is just getting out there and doing it. And it is a process. It takes a bit of time and a little bit of work, but it's not that bad in the grand scheme of things if you realize how much per hour you're going to make in the end.
Before I open this for questions, I just want to ask, do you and Anna have anything on the calendar as far as upcoming travel?
Anna's thinking about going to Germany for Christmas. We're still trying to figure it out. We don't have anything 100% in plan, but we may be traveling here very, very shortly. Not entirely 100% sure yet. I'm pretty spontaneous when it comes to travel, but nothing planned right now.
So I could ask you that same question next week and it could be a completely different story.
It could be, most definitely.
I love that. And I think that's simplicity in life allows you to be that way.
Correct. It's made my life a lot easier because I've chosen not to take on a large amount of debt. I chose not to buy a car right out of college. Like they're not the end of the world, but they do slow down the process.
Mm-hmm. All right. Well, are you up for answering questions if anybody has any?
Sure, if I can answer them, yeah.
All right. I want to encourage all of you, anybody who has any questions for Sean, I would just ask you to unmute yourselves and then go ahead and ask your questions.
So Sean, this is Michael Plow. Love hearing your story.
Hi, Michael. How's it going?
Good. How are you?
Doing well.
So I'm wondering if you can walk me through a little bit more of the numbers on one of your deals, what the cash flow is, the numbers. I'm a little more interested. You said Indiana, right? As the target area? Yeah.
So my first property I bought out of Indiana. It's a smaller home. It is 850 square feet. Or 800, somewhere around there. So CapEx and repairs is a little bit less, but the home is $85,000. So purchase a home for $85,000. It rents out for $1,100 a month. Mm-hmm. It cash flows for roughly $500 a month. Okay. Not including CapEx and repairs. And I think after CapEx and repairs, it's right around 400. Granted, I am fine tuning the numbers as I get more information from CapEx and repairs from my actual deals. And so estimated return is 25 to 30%. And if CapEx turns out to be a bit more, maybe 20%.
Okay, that's pretty good. And so your goal is to have 12 that are cash flowing close to 500 before CapEx and repairs?
Yes.
Okay, cool. Are you using a property management firm, or are you planning to do it all yourself?
I'm planning on doing it all myself. Okay. And I will adjust as needed. If later on I want to travel, say for a year, maybe I'll hire a property management company for a period of time, or I'm not sure how exactly that'll work later on, but property management tends to add on quite a bit in fees, and I'm not necessarily convinced that the repair costs and whatnot are gonna be worth the time. And I just need to find a local contractor or a handyman as I get bigger.
Yeah. And you do, I have a current full-time day job separate from the real estate stuff?
Yes.
Yeah, good for you. I'm in a similar camp. I've been doing real estate for a while, and prices definitely are higher in the Twin Cities market here, as you've probably seen. But the margins that I started going for a while back were similar to what you're targeting. And, you know, high five. I think you've got a great start.
Yeah, and actually, quite frankly, we found out after we bought this property that we're undercharging in rent. We should have been up by $100, and we added a laundry machines.
Oh, okay.
And at the end, that should have added the extra little bit of money, but it's doesn't make that much of a difference. We have another property that just rented out for, we bought it for 110 was the second one, 110, 112, and that rents out for $1,250 a month. So same $500, just a little bit further south, slightly nicer neighborhood. The numbers have, I mean, and it's easy. We're buying these right off the MLS. Nothing super complicated to find deals.
You got the advantage of really low interest rates helping you too, which is nice.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. That's really helped out. Although I will say, even with the first one at 85, that one was around 5% interest, and it's still cash flowing nicely.
Are you using commercial or mortgages?
Just mortgages. We found a mortgage broker here in Chicago that's he's been quite awesome, figuring it out, running through the numbers. And so he's done a great job with different things.
I'll bet if you continue looking into bankers, you might even get into the 3% for a rental property as you start establishing a track record.
Yeah, and that was actually the second property we got into 3%. The first one, and I'm not sure if they charge more, like if there's 100 mark, all of a sudden they lower their interest rate, but they both the numbers, we saw that the numbers worked out on both of them, so we're like, okay, sure, why not?
Very cool. I have to jump to another meeting at work, but thanks for hosting this, you guys.
Hey, no problem. We look forward to doing more of them. All right. Anyone else? Any questions? I want to encourage those of you who are here, and especially those of you getting started, take some time to ask the questions now. If not, you can post questions for Sean in the group.
Yep, I would be happy to answer them.
Well, Sean, I want to just thank you for, well, it looks like Ginger, you just unmuted yourself.
Hi, thank you. I joined in late, so I probably missed this. How are you funding the deals? How are you finding them?
How are you finding them?
Yes, the properties, yes.
I'm just finding them right off the MLS. I have a local real estate agent that'll set up the searches, and so most of the time they're I don't want to say lower end properties, because these properties, neither of them had needed a ton of work. I saw the ones that needed a bunch of work, and I think I can do just about the same thing without adding trying to go in and fix all of them. And so I just find them, I set up a search with a real estate agent, I go out and see the properties, and for the most part, it's just getting out there and putting out offers and seeing what you can get. And so I started with just finding a real estate agent, walked down there and probably saw quite a few properties and put out a couple offers, and that's how I found both of these.
Okay, that's good. And how are you funding the deals?
Funding has been going through savings. So I have found a mortgage broker here, and then I have had quite a bit of savings over the last couple of years where I worked and just put up a little bit of cash, and that's how I've been doing this.
Okay, so you're using your own money.
Yeah.
Okay, so are you buying them outright?
No. Not outright. I am putting 15% down on the properties. I have the ability to go much further, but I figured in the beginning as I'm learning the process, I don't want to put as much cash out. So I have a very large reserve. And from there, it's just been in putting 15% down and then seeing and then spreading it out and diversifying.
Okay. All right. Well, thank you.
Not a problem.
All right. Anybody else? Questions?
Yes, I have a question.
Go ahead.
I've had problems where trying to get a mortgage, even if I put a larger amount of a down payment, for anything related to rental properties. Have you had that problem?
No.
Any income properties where they won't, lend you money? It has to be a house where you're going to live in.
Where are you located?
I'm in Florida, like the Fort Lauderdale area.
I'm gonna guess that you're just talking to the wrong people. Investor financing on rental properties right now is pretty easy to get. There's programs all over the place. Not everyone has them available. And so have you been dealing with a mortgage broker or one particular bank? Have you been going to many different places? What has your experience been?
Well, I've been using the broker that the bank that I use to get the mortgage for my house. And that's what they tell me, because I'm not going to be living in it, they can't get me a mortgage. And I've looked into hard money loans, but it seems just so complicated and expensive. And I don't want to take my chances with them. For some reason, I don't trust them as much as I would a bank.
Yeah, I would not use a hard money loan for a rental property. I'd use a hard money loan for a flip all day long. Mm-hmm. If you were going to use it for a rental property, it should be because the property is a fixer-upper. You're going to use the hard money loan to buy the property, get it fixed up, and then you're going to refinance with somebody else to get out of that hard money loan would be the plan. But if you're buying properties that are rent ready and they're ready to go, there's financing out there. Your bank is just not the right bank to be dealing with, the ones who did it. But finding a good mortgage broker, they have multiple different programs that are available to them. Chances are that the program that Sean is using is probably available to you in Florida as well. You just got a mortgage broker who has access to the same lender. But it is, I know that there's a guy here who I am talking to who basically told me that he would be able to get me 2 3/4% on rental properties all day long.
Wow.
And it is crazy in my mind to think that that's the case, but they say that that's available out there, and it's readily available. So just understand that when one person says no, it just means it's no for them. Don't take that as it's a no for you. You just got to go find the right person and you'll be able to get it.
Okay. Sounds good. Thank you.
Just another note on hard money lenders. I see, I've been doing this for a long time. Hard money lenders are phenomenal. They're great. But I see that there's 2 different kinds of hard money lenders. There's the private individual, and then there is the institutional. For the most part, when I was really borrowing a lot of money in my early career, I never wanted to work with the institutional ones. It was always the private people who were lending hard money that I worked with. And they were very easy to deal with. Getting through the first deal was always a little bit more difficult, but beyond that, it got very easy.
Mm-hmm. Okay, thank you for the advice.
You're welcome. Anyone else with a question for Sean?
I have another question.
Yeah.
So how many, I know the bank can only lend you so much money, but or what is the equation to how much you can borrow from the bank, or how many mortgages can you have? I'm in the middle of refinancing a rental property, and I'm looking forward to refinancing another one that I have in subject to. So I don't know, what I'm going to be looking at if I try to bring that up to a bank to refinancing that one.
Can I address this one for you, Sean?
Yeah, absolutely.
At gender, it's going to be different. It all depends upon the banks that you're going to. If you're falling into one of the secondary market programs like a Fannie Mae or Freddie Mac loan, they limit those to 10 that you can put into your personal name. But apart from that, if you're dealing with other smaller community banks and things like that, it's just a matter of their asset size, how big the bank is. And for the most part, they can lend up to any one borrower 1% of their assets. So, if they're a bank that has $100 million in assets, they could lend up to $1 million to you. If they have $1 billion in assets, they can lend up to $10 million to you. So it's very dependent upon how much or how big that small community bank is. And but at the end of the day, if you tap one out, you just go to another bank. And they're very, very willing, especially when you have a good track record with one, they'll compete to try to get you to come and do business with them. So I would never worry about running out of money. If one, the way that I answered the last person was, if one person tells you no, it's no for them. That doesn't mean it's no for you. And you just need to go and find somebody else.
Okay. Do you have any recommendations of who's willing to, who I should reach out to?
Well, where are you located?
Property is in Georgia.
And so one of the things that I would do, do you own it in your personal name?
Well, one we do. Another one, it's coming into a personal name, and then the third one, it will be coming into a personal name if needed.
So if I owned them in my personal name, I would find a local mortgage broker and look for somebody who's investor friendly. Get somebody maybe through a RIA meeting, or even ask in the Lifeonaire community, does anybody know of a good investor friendly mortgage broker in the Georgia area, whatever part of Georgia you're in, and let them just go to bat for you. They'll shop many different lenders to find what's the best thing that they can get for you. If you are doing them in a company name, I would recommend that you start to identify who some of the smaller community banks are in the area, and not going to like Bank of America or Chase or Citibank. You don't want to go to them. You want to go to, the First Bank of Macon, or, wherever it is. Those are the kinds of banks that you want to develop your relationships with. And they're the ones that can typically lend up to 1% of their total asset value to any given borrower. They're very flexible. They keep all of their loans in-house, so they can be flexible with the way that they structure the loans. Whereas when you're going into the secondary market, you have to conform. There's a certain way that your loan has to look, and certain criteria that you have to hit, and there's no flexibility with that. You have to check off all the boxes in order to get the loan. But with the small local community banks, they make up the boxes as they go. They have a standard, but they have flexibility, and they can bend if need be.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Thank you.
You're welcome. All right. Any other questions? Well, the first thing, let me just say this. In a moment, I'm going to be going out to look at a property, and hopefully be my first flip property here in Knoxville, Tennessee. But the numbers on this one are, I can pick it up for around 200. I got to just try to confirm a few things, but it's a $450,000 home when it's done. And does need a lot of rehab, but I'll get on out and take a look at this thing and see where it goes. But apart from that, I want to just thank you, Sean, for the time that you spent here with us today. I am very excited for where you and Anna are going.
Thank you.
I'm looking forward to seeing the ride and the progress that you continue to make, and hoping that sometime here real soon that you hit that point of complete freedom and you guys are able to just do what you want to do and live off of your rentals.
Thank you. Thank you. It shouldn't be too long of a process. I think that this community has been absolutely super helpful getting through this process, and it's just getting out there and working through it.
Well, I'm happy for you guys. Well, thank you. Have a great day, everyone.
Bye.